Pandasya Dhananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, Hare Krishna. So today we will be discussing the next verse in chapter 4, which is verse 10. And as usual on the Sunday, we will have a nice bhajan afterwards around 8:40. So I'll just share my screen. So I'm just gonna use Vedabase. I don't have a PowerPoint this time. Okay, so start with the Sanskrit. Sa samrat kasya veheto pandunam manavardhanah prayopavishto gangayam anadrityadirathriyam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So translation, he was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast until death? Purport. Maharaj Parikshit was the emperor of the world and all the seas and oceans, and he did not have to take the trouble to acquire such a kingdom by his own effort. He inherited it from his grandfathers, Maharaj Yudhishthir and brothers. Besides that, he was doing well in the administration and was worthy of the good names of his forefathers. Consequently, there was nothing undesirable in his opulence and administration. Then why should he give up all these favorable circumstances and sit down on the bank of the Ganges, fasting till death? This is astonishing, and therefore all were eager to know the cause. Okay, so just some points on the translation first. So we can see here that it mentions that his kingdom is an acquired kingdom. So as it said in the purport, this kingdom was passed down to him from his grandfather, Maharaj Yudhishthir. And here it's saying that he possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. And then we see also in the purport how it's not just any kingdom, but it's a kingdom of the whole world. He is emperor of the whole world, all the seas, all the oceans. So literally everything, he is the king of that. He has everything. He has everything that anyone, in one sense, anything that anyone would possibly want, he has it. He has everything in abundance. He's not lacking anything. At least if we say from a material point of view, yeah, he wasn't lacking anything. We will discuss the spiritual side as well. But just at least looking from a material point of view, he had absolutely anything that anyone could desire. And it's describing in the purport, that he's inherited it, but also he's a great ruler in his own right. Because it's not necessarily that your forefathers were good rulers and then you will be. It's not necessarily that you would be a good ruler as well. But here it's saying he wasn't someone who just inherited a kingdom and then is just enjoying it. But no, he was a great ruler. It says here, worthy of the good names of his forefathers. And we can see in the translation how he's described in relation to his dynasty. It says Pandunam, of the sons of Pandu. But if we see the translation, it says, he was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. So, you would think that there's no way to increase the prestige anymore. Like Maharaj Yudhishthira and his brothers, the Pandavas, such great rulers, so much prestige. But here it's saying Maharaj Parikshit was even increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Then we have, so it says that consequently there was nothing undesirable in his opulence and administration. So when the ruler, when the king, or whoever the ruler is, the king or queen, they are not just materially a great ruler, but they're also a devotee. Then it's described elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam how everything within the kingdom is peaceful. There's nothing, like it says here, nothing undesirable. There was no, Maharaj Parikshit was such a powerful ruler, such a strong ruler, that there was practically, the citizen didn't need to worry about anything. All their needs were, Maharaj Parikshit would always make sure that all the needs of the citizens would be met. And as we know from the pastimes with the cow and the bull, not just the human citizens, but every living entity, whether in human body or animal body, he made sure he gave protection to all of those living entities. All those living entities within the kingdom, he considered as his citizens. Doesn't matter whether they're in a human body or a cow body or whatever kind of body it is. He felt it was his duty to give protection to every living entity in the kingdom. So the question here is basically, why someone who has absolutely everything, they're not lacking in anything whatsoever, why on earth would they give up all of that? This is for a materialistic person. This is the only goal of their life, the only aim of their life. If a materialistic person was to obtain what Maharaj Parikshit had materially, then they would think, okay, now I'm sorted. No, I don't need anything else. And they think, my life is perfect now. So the question is, why would someone who seems to have this perfect life, why would he give up all of these things? So, so we mentioned before the material side, how he has everything materially, but he's a devotee, so he understands that the material things are not so significant, but what is the real opulence? What is the real wealth? It is, our service to the Supreme Lord, our relationship with the Supreme Lord. developing pure love for the Lord, all these things. This is the real wealth that the devotee is aspiring for. So because of that, because they're not aspiring for these material opulences, then they don't have that attachment to it. So just like how Maharaj Parikshit so easily, pretty much immediately, as soon as he was able, he left the kingdom after he got he heard the pronouncement that in 7 days he would be losing his life. So immediately, because he wasn't attached to those material things, he was able to easily give those things up. So ultimately, our wealth is Krishna. And I just wanted to mention a very short quote. It's from Pankajangri Prabhu. Last time he was at the manor, before he finished his pastimes within Earth, he 2019, that was the last time he was at the manor. And just one sentence he said in his class one morning. He said, "You can have everything, but if you don't have Krishna, then what's the use?" So very short, very simple. In Pankajangri Prabhu's characteristic style, he keeps it very simple, but still at the same time very, very powerful, very profound. That, we can, none of these material things can possibly compare to Krishna. And another very similar quote on this one. So just give me 1 second. There's another one on a similar point from Srila Prabhupada. And okay, so we're saying that a devotee, they're not attached to any of these material things. They don't consider them their own possessions. They understand who actually possesses those things. Krishna possesses them. So they all those possessions, so-called possessions that they have, actually they belong to Krishna. And then so Srila Prabhupada, this is also on Bhagavatam, but this is his lecture on 1/8/27, chapter 8, text 27. This was in Los Angeles, 19th of April, 1973. Is on this point about not possessing anything. It says, when one becomes a kinchana, nothing to possess, everything finished, then Krishna becomes the only riches for such a person, because he's devotee. Just like Narottam Das Thakur says, "Ha Prabhu Nanda Sutta, Vrishabhanu Sutta Juta, Karuna Karoho Ebaro, Narottama Dasa Koi Nateli Horangapai, Doma Bineke Ache Ama." Srila Prabhupada says, this position that Krishna, accept yourself, I have nothing to claim. I have nothing, no possession. So please don't neglect me, because you are my only possession. Prabhupada adds, this position is very nice. When we do not depend on anything material, simply depend on Krishna, that is first class position of Krishna consciousness. So basically, when we have this understanding that none of those things are actually our possessions, it's not that then we feel ourselves lacking. We feel, okay, I don't possess anything. So then we don't become sad about that. We don't become depressed about that. Because why? Because instead of all those things, we have Krishna himself as our possession, as our only possession. Like this statement from Narottam Das Thakur in the bhajan we all know, Hari Hari Bifale. This is the last verse from that bhajan. So, so what is better than that? You know, none of those things compare to having Krishna himself. And it's saying, what does it mean to have this understanding that I have no possessions? It doesn't mean that we have to get rid of them, throw them away, or anything like that. Prabhupada explains so many times that it just requires a change of consciousness. Just like he often also said, you know, when we come to Krishna consciousness, we don't have to change what we do. We can do exactly the same, you know, same activities. He says, you know, devotee, he says, you know, you see in one house, materialistic person is doing this, they're eating, sleeping, working, all these things. Then you see in the temple, you see the devotees, they're doing the same thing. What's the difference? The difference is the consciousness, the understanding that it's all for Krishna. So that's what it is. It's not giving up the actual objects, but this mentality or this sense of ownership, of proprietorship over those things. We give up that. We don't have to give up the actual things, the actual objects itself. Of course, in this situation, Maharaj Parikshit did, you know, give up. You know, he actually did give it all up. He gave up the kingdom. He left the throne to his successor, and you know, then as we can see here, he went to the bank of the Ganges, fasting till death. But you know, as we understand from Srimad Bhagavatam, you know, that's not the only thing. He didn't just sit there in silence and do nothing and just wait for death to come. In one sense, he was waiting in the sense that, yeah, he was waiting, obviously, because he understood, okay, I only have 7 days. But he wasn't just sitting there. What was he doing? He was hearing. He was hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. He's hearing from Shukadev Goswami. So he was making the best use of those last 7 days that he had to hear about Krishna, to hear about Krishna's pastimes and the pastimes of Krishna's devotees. So yeah, so it's not just giving up for no good reason, but giving it up and then doing something Krishna conscious. Then it's worthwhile, you know. If we're just giving up for the sake of it, then no. So yeah, so he understood the importance, you know, hearing is so powerful, and that's why that is why I believe, I think it's, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Rupa Goswami when he explains that for the 9 processes of bhakti, he gives an example of, obviously there's many examples for each of the 9, but he gives, according to his understanding, he gives one particular devotee who really represents those 9 processes. So for, you know, as we know, Shravanam and Kirtanam are the first 2. So for Shravanam, who does he give? Maharaj Parikshit. And for Kirtanam, Shukadev Goswami. So Maharaj Parikshit, he was the best listener, and Shukadev Goswami, the best speaker. And that's why he had this this incredible conversation, incredible interaction with the 2, because Maharaj Parikshit was a perfect listener and Shukadev Goswami was a perfect speaker. So yeah, so he understood the supreme importance of hearing about Krishna rather than hearing about so many mundane things. And another thing I wanted to share, just on this point of hearing, since we're discussing this on the importance of hearing. So this is actually from, I was listening to a lecture from Amarendra Prabhu. I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, have heard of Amarendra Prabhu. You know, he gives incredible classes, incredible bhajans he sings. But anyway, this was from a class on, you can find it on YouTube. The class was called Power of Hearing Krishna Leela. This was in April, so not too long ago, just about 1 month ago, 16th of April, if you want to look for it. Basically, the reason I wanted to mention this, he gives 7 effects of hearing Krishna Katha. 7 effects, or you could say 7 benefits or advantages of hearing Krishna Katha. And this is, of course, based on scripture. It's based on Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'll just read this out. So number 1, our misfortunes are taken away. 2, our good fortune is multiplied. 3, our consciousness gets cleansed. 4, bhakti arises in our heart. And when he was speaking about bhakti, he meant proper fixed devotional service, not not unsteady, wavering devotional service that I mean, I can't speak for others, but when we're still materially conditioned, generally our devotional service is not so steady, it's wavering. But here he's saying proper fixed bhakti. So bhakti arises, you could say bhakti arises in our heart and becomes fixed in our heart. So that is number 4. Number 5, we gain proper knowledge of Krishna. Proper knowledge, meaning not just gathering theoretical knowledge for the sake of it, but proper knowledge in relation to Krishna, in the line of devotion. Not just gathering knowledge for the sake of it. So then number 6, we develop renunciation from the material world. And as we mentioned earlier, that doesn't necessarily mean throwing it all away, but it's a change of consciousness. Then number 7, he says that we gain complete realization of Krishna. He doesn't just say realization, but complete realization. So you could say that's kind of like the last effect. Yes, you could. He didn't exactly say that this is an order, but you could see definitely number 7. That's kind of like the end result, that after gaining all these other things, eventually we gain complete realization of Krishna. So these are the 7 effects of hearing Krishna Katha. Okay. Okay, so here it says towards the end. Oh, actually before that, it also mentions, that he gave up favorable circumstances. So I was just thinking when reading that, we sometimes hear that, if we don't perfect the process of Krishna consciousness in this lifetime, what does Krishna say? That we can, next life, we can be born in a family. I mean, depending on our situation, maybe a family of devotees, or at least a pious family, a saintly family, or a wealthy family, it says as well. So sometimes we may hear that and think, okay, I understand being born in a devotee family or a very pious family, but how does being born in a wealthy family, how is that favorable? I mean, yeah, how does that help in our spiritual life? Isn't that not a disadvantage? Isn't that something we are told we don't want to be, born in such a family, but it's favorable if we use it for Krishna. If we have that facility that we can use for Krishna, then it is favorable. If we have so much wealth that we can use for Krishna's devotees, then it's a favorable circumstance for our devotional life. Obviously, it depends on our individual situation. We know Krishna is not going to give those things if we have that material desire for it, that attachment for it, and it's going to be unfavorable for our devotional life. It's going to essentially, if it's going to take us away from him, then he's not going to be inclined to give it to us. But if he knows that if he gives us that wealth or that opulence or whatever it might be, if he gives those material things to us and he knows we don't have that attachment to it and we're just going to use it in his service, then he can he could give us unlimited wealth, so much opulence he can give to his devotee if he knows they're not attached to it. And we can, a good example we could say is Sudama, Krishna's friend, Sudama the Brahmana. We know, I'm sure we're all familiar with the pastimes. We don't need to go into so much detail in the pastime, but we know that Sudama came to see Krishna, and he was materially he was in poverty and he had nothing. So his wife advised him to go and see Krishna. But even then, when he was there, he didn't ask for anything at all. And then afterwards he even left not asking for anything after that whole time he spent with Krishna. But when he returned home, what happened? We know that his house, his little hut, his humble hut, had been transformed into a great palace. His wife had been transformed, and even she had so many maidservants. They didn't have any servants before. Now so many maidservants as well. Such a huge palace, so much opulence. So why did Krishna then at that time give him all of those things? Because he had no attachment. He had no more material desires. It is said that because the one purpose of this pastime, obviously on one side, on the internal point of view, it's just an exchange of love between Krishna and his devotee. But in another sense, it's said that the only kind of material desire or attachment that Sudama had was he was actually attached to being renounced. He actually had an attachment to his great renunciation. So Krishna gave him all this opulence to remove that last trace of material attachment. That he's had some just very little attachment to renunciation, to renouncing all opulence. So Krishna gives him opulence, so he can no longer claim to be renounced on that same level. But with that last attachment being removed, then obviously he's not gonna enjoy that palace or anything. It's all for Krishna. So so that was about favorable circumstances. So then it ends the purport with, "This is astonishing, and therefore all were eager to know the cause." So we kind of cover this as well, that it's incredible. It would be particularly astonishing for someone who is materialistic, as we mentioned before, that it's yeah, it's not something that they would possibly be able to understand, that you have everything. So, you know, why on earth would you give that up? Therefore, it's astonishing. So all were eager. So everyone that who was assembled there, they were really eager to know about this. And so indirectly, you could say they were eager to know, or they were eager to hear about the glories of Maharaj Parikshit, because ultimately this is showing, it said he was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. And this is just, there's many examples. This is one example of how great he is, how glorious he actually is, that he would so easily give up everything. So therefore, all the assembled sages, they wanted to hear about this. They wanted to hear about the glories of Maharaj Parikshit. And this is generally the mood of the devotee. They really like to hear the glories of the Vaishnavas. This is they relish it. You relish hearing the glories of Krishna's devotees and the relationships and pastimes that they have with Krishna. So Maharaj Parikshit is one example. There's so many different examples, so many glorious devotees that we hear about. For example, one example we've already discussed, the Pandavas. If we just look at Srimad Bhagavatam, Pandavas, a great example. So much things happen to them which seems very, very difficult, so much suffering. But we see how throughout all these things, they remained fixed on Krishna. They didn't think, all these, we are devotees, we are, everything we're doing is for Krishna. We've given up everything for Krishna. Then why is it all these things are happening to us? People are trying to kill us, set fire to the house, poison, all these different things. Why is all of this happening? And they if a person their faith is not strong, then that may, push them away from Krishna. That why is this happening? But we see the glories of the Pandavas in this situation, how rather than drifting away from Krishna, that brought them even closer to Krishna. They became even more surrendered, and even more so, we could say, their mother, Kunti Maharani, she was such an incredible example that she prayed, as we all know, she prayed for more suffering, for more of this misfortune, that so she can always be thinking of Krishna, always be fixed on Krishna. So we see the glories of the devotees throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. So all the devotees mentioned, in Vrindavan, in Canto 10, we hear the glories of the Rajavasis, we hear the glories of Mother Yashoda, the cowherd boys, the gopis. So it's just full. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of the glories of the devotees. So not just the glories of Krishna, of the Lord, but of his devotees as well. So we can make this point here that devotees are eager to know the glories of other devotees. And that's just how it is, that it generally takes these difficult situations for us to actually see how glorious these devotees who are around us, how glorious they actually are, because we may not know who is actually walking among us, such incredible souls, who they actually are. We don't even know what their actual spiritual identity is. We don't know. But often, it takes these very difficult, so-called difficult situations for the glories of that devotee to be revealed to everyone. And another example for us, being part of the Mana community, if you like, Shruti Dharma Prabhu was such an incredible example for us, that obviously everyone knew that he was an amazing devotee, but then we saw even more that how he dealt with the cancer and how he dealt with the last years, last months. He dealt with it perfectly, like a perfect devotee, how a perfect devotee would deal with it. He dealt with it in that way, and therefore his glory was even more. His glory became even more apparent to us. So yeah, sometimes it does happen that only after the devotee has left this material world, then we actually hear how glorious that person actually was, that personality was. So another example for us, again from the Mana community, Jankinath Prabhu. Again, such an incredible example, and at least speaking for myself, again, I knew he was a great devotee, but it's only after he left, and then we had all those memorial programs where devotees were telling everyone about their incredible experiences and pastimes with Jankinath Prabhu, and then we actually hear so many, just glorification after glorification of that Vaishnava, and then we realize, the caliber of the kind of devotees that were actually walking among us. So before, we may not have realized full understanding of these devotees, and yeah. So obviously, there's many other examples that we could discuss. Obviously, our own. The best example we can give is obviously Srila Prabhupada, that he is the Acharya, he is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's general, his commander-in-chief, who came to spread Krishna consciousness to the Western world, to the rest of the world, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started it, and he then sent his general, his Senapati Bhakta, to do the rest. And so how can we think of a greater devotee than that, at least from our experience in this world? Srila Prabhupada, greatest devotee, and yet even he experienced so-called suffering, so-called so great difficulties in his life. Even he did, and yet, despite all of that, he achieved everything that he achieved. So again, one reason for this is Krishna wanted us to see Srila Prabhupada's glories. Devotees say that, if it was just, easy, that, Srila Prabhupada just had a gentle journey on the sea, no heart attack, none of that, just very easy. And then, he went to America straight away, everything came to him, straight away, loads and loads of devotees came. If everything was so easy like that, then we wouldn't have all these incredible pastimes revealing Srila Prabhupada's glory, that despite going through all of those things, he still achieved the impossible. So because the fact that he Krishna arranged for those difficult circumstances, it really reveals Srila Prabhupada's glory. So yeah, anyway, that is all the points that came to mind for me. So I don't know if anyone has anything that you would like to add, any more examples from the points that I was mentioning, or any questions, please feel free. Hare Krishna. Okay, so if not, then we have a bhajan. So, okay, so I believe Santosh Mataji, are you ready?
Yes, Prabhuji, I'm here. Could Namrita Mataji read the English translation first, please? Thank you. And if Jyoti Mataji could share the lyrics, please. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, my Dhanavad Pranam, my humble obeisances to all the assembled devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Chant the name of Hari. O brothers, with blissful minds, chant the name of Hari. Chant the name of Hari. Birth after birth, in happiness, chant the name of Hari. Chant the name of Hari. O brothers, you have obtained a human birth. Now chant the name of Hari. Chant the name of Hari. Whether you are in happiness or distress, chant the name of Hari. Chant the name of Hari. O brothers, whether in prosperity or misfortune, chant the name of Hari. Chant the name of Hari. Whether you live at home or in the forest, chant the name of Hari. Remaining in this material world for Krishna's purposes, chant the name of Hari. Chant the name of Hari. O brothers, give up the association of non-devotees and chant the name of Hari. Chant the name of Hari. Falling at the feet of the Vaishnavas, chant the name of Hari. Chant the name of Hari. Chant the names of Gaura and Nityananda. Chant the names of Gaura and Gadadhara. Chant the names of Gaura and Advaita. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Namrita Mataji. Beautifully recited. So this is a beautiful bhajan called Bol Hari Bol. I have Avani with me, who is going to sing with me. And this bhajan is by Bhakti Vinoda Thakura. Ready? Bo. Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol. Manere Nandar Bhai, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol. Janame sukhe, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol. Manave janame pe, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol. Sukhe dako, dukhe thako, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol. Sampade vipade bhai, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol. Grahe thako, vane thako, Bol Hari Bol. Krishna re samsare take, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol. Asat sange chadi bhai, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol. Vaishnave charane pori, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol. Gaura Nityananda bolo, Bol Hari Bol. Gaura Gadadhara bolo, Bol Hari Bol. Gaura Advaita bolo, Bol Hari Bol, 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 Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol, Bol Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Jai, Hare Krishna. Wow. That was incredible. Thank you so much for that bhajan. I don't think I've heard that one before actually, so that was really nice. And yeah, agree with the comments on the chat. That it was amazing hearing you singing together at the same time. Wonderful harmony with the voices. So thank you so much. And yeah, thank you everyone for coming to another chat session. And see you soon. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Antakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you.